Hi. So I was having lunch with a friend the other day, and he asked me, we were just talking about books, and he asked me, name the one book that really made a massive difference to you through your career in a professional sort of way. And I said, there's classic example for me is Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't actually like the title. I think it sounds pretentious, but it's an amazing book. I absolutely love it. I always have loved it. And he said, no, that's too easy. You have to pick something a bit more technical. I said, like, well, how about the lean startup? Again, Eric Ries, amazing, had a massive impact when it came out. And it's still as relevant today as it was back then. And he said, again, probably a little bit too easy. So, okay, Agile Software Development by Alistair Cockburn. And he said, yeah, it's a great one, but there are now other books, maybe even better books out there. It's a matter of opinion, obviously, but there's maybe better books out there now to teach people about agile software development. And I said, okay, I've got it. And this is the one. This is the one I settled on in the end. It's Design Patterns by Erich Gamma and a few others. And the reason I picked it in the end was because of how I discovered the book and how often I went back to this book over my career, over the years. Because I think it was about 1995. I was in my final year at uni, and one of my professors sort of mentioned something during a lunch break. And he said, look, I'm reading this book, and I have a feeling that you guys might not quite get it yet. But this book, he believed at the time, would change the world of software development and would have a massive impact on software development and how we design systems going forward. And he was right. He was 100% right. And yes, also, he was right on both points. I didn't quite get it at the time. I really didn't. It wasn't until later that I really understood it. Because we were learning at university, we were learning structured analysis, structured design methods. We were learning object-oriented analysis and object-oriented design. And yes, there were ways to recognize good design and bad design. But ultimately, it came down to spending more and more time designing systems to gain the experience to come up with good designs. What design patterns did was different. Design patterns basically means here are some examples of good designs for specific problems. And if you understand these designs for these patterns for these specific problems, it will make you a better software engineer. And ultimately, what this then means is rather than making a question of experience, spending more time doing it and learning from others over the years, for the first time, Erich Gamma was saying good design can be learned and good design can be taught right from the beginning. Because if you understand these patterns well, then even when you stray away from the patterns, you will know what's good design because you've learned these patterns. And also, this is something that happened to me over the years as well. These patterns are not only something that you put in your own designs, you will recognize these patterns in other designs. So there's examples like the Java API, the core Java API. If I say to you things like factory methods, singletons, Java Spring, the Spring framework, singleton is the whole premise of it. There's almost everything is a singleton in there. When you have a components are usually singletons. Things like builders, the builder pattern, when you build response objects and you build them up gradually rather than using one big constructor where you don't actually know what all the different arguments are. You basically just build it up gradually, and then at the end you say build, and that's it, and you've got your object that you can use, you've got the response that you can then return. Adapters, decorators, and things like mediators, chain of responsibility, all of these are patterns that are all over the place, and they're really good examples in not just in Java and other languages as well, where either, when you're designing something yourself, you can use these patterns to design something, and when you're using someone else's library, you recognize the pattern straight away. So you intuitively know how to use a library because you recognize the patterns within it. And that's what makes this book so revolutionary, because it means that people agree on good design, across the world. And that is, how this came about, because Erich Gamma started this as his PhD thesis and then started involving others and say, like, look, can you review this and say, is this actually a good design? And is there a better way of doing this? So this is best practice for these problems, how you then design these solutions. And as I said, the reason this book has made such a big difference to me is over the years, it's been on my bookshelf all this time. And over the years, I've picked it up on several occasions, actually quite often, where you think, well, actually, I've got this problem here. How would I do it? How would I design it? It's at that point that you actually go, you find the pattern, you read the whole lot, and that's when you then apply that knowledge and that pattern to your own solution. And that actually sort of brings me to how would you read this book? Because this is more like a reference document. It's not really a reference book. It's not something that you would read cover to cover. But it's well worth reading the first couple of chapters. And then when you get to the pattern library, it's worth reading the overview for each of those patterns to help you understand them, have a feeling for them, and, sort of take it in and take it with you. And then when you recognize it at a later point, you have a problem and you need to solve that problem, then you might remember one of these patterns. And that's when you go in and you read the actual details for the whole pattern. So, yeah, a book that stood the test of time, a book that was revolutionary at the time and is still relevant today. If you're new to software engineering, or if you're studying computer science at the moment, this is the book you want to buy. You really need this. So that's my recommendation today.